Hey, I bet you're going to like this one. I was originally going to put this on the Sales Leadership Show, and I may do it eventually, but I thought it was so good that I wanted to share it on this feed. Because this is a rep who had the humble beginnings of retail sales, but moved into business to business sales and has had a great deal of success. And more than anything, has the respect of his team and came highly recommended from his team. So his journey is important, I think, for all of us as reps, whether we want to stay individual contributors or we want to get into leadership. And part of that getting into leadership has that same falling into part that we do in sales, where typically we get into sales either because we're money motivated or can't do much. We could do other things, but they don't pay as well. So we kind of fall into sales and then kind of like it or get addicted to it, or, we stay in it because there's nothing better out there. But what we talk about today is critical. So if you ever want to become a leader or you want to understand the thought process of your manager, especially if you're in the situation of micromanagement. And micromanagement is the dominant approach today. The key thing is nobody thinks they're a micromanager. Everybody thinks it's just accountability, it's just discipline, it's just structure. But if it's not increasing revenue, it's decreasing revenue. And I'm coaching a couple of sales leaders right now and trying to help them get through it, because what they do, and I don't want to spoil the episode, is they want to do something. And that something may be interpreted as micromanagement. It's kind of not helpful. It takes up time, energy, focus, and doesn't increase revenue. Let's get into the interview. Give this one a chance. Like a lot of these, you're going to hear it. You're going to sense what being great at sales takes, the mindset, the skill set, and how to interact with other people, both externally at your clients and internally with your peers and your manager. And when you kind of understand why your manager's doing it, maybe you can work around it or work with them to build up that trust, to let them do what you need to do to close some business. Before we get into it, make sure you check out our friends over at CoVideo. Video email is crushing it. You got to try it, see if it fits into your lifestyle, because it just cuts through a lot of that resistance that we get about who you are. Are you friend or foe? Are you on my side? Are you helping me? Or are you just pitching me? Anybody notice the pitch is kind of wearing off? The do dumb things faster products are ruining the sales performance instead of increasing it. Yes, you can do dumb things faster, but it doesn't accomplish anything. We have to connect with another human being, and that will never go away. Guess what? Everybody wants to. Don't you want to talk to somebody right now? But it's about you. It's not about them. That's how they feel. Video is one of those ways of connecting with people. Give it a shot at covideo.com. And if you're in the courses, make sure you're checking out those office hours. We had a great one yesterday, and I'll sum it up at the end and give you frequently asked questions about the courses and help you, because I put it everywhere. I put it in the show notes. I put it on YouTube. I put it on my LinkedIn personal profile. It's everywhere. Just check it out. If I still don't answer your question, send me an email. Email's in the show notes. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure, Brian. Thanks for having me. Scott Farber, I've been in sales for over 20 years. Started my career in retail jewelry sales at a very young age, which is where I kind of learned that this may be something that I want to do, and I have stories on that. Worked my way through college doing that. Had the opportunity to start my sales career from a B2B perspective with Monster.com, if you remember when Monster first came out. So I started our local division there. And that was an incredible experience. I was then recruited by a very large IT consulting company by the name of Tech Systems, where I was also doing B2B sales. And that was where I got exposed to my first opportunity in leadership. So from a sales leadership perspective, a fantastic company. I was fortunate enough to move all around the country, running some of our markets, our key strategic markets, taking on some key strategic initiatives. I was there for about 13 years and then got the entrepreneurial itch after 13 years. Decided to do some consulting and went into switched verticals completely and went into the SaaS space, which was a challenge I wanted to do. So I was VP of sales for a startup SaaS company, which was a great experience to help them get launched off the ground. And from there, after spending my time there to kind of see if the entrepreneurial side is where I wanted to go, started a company by the name of Integris Group. And Integris Group, we do a combination of both sales consulting as well as sales staffing. And so we have been in business now for a little bit over a year and enjoying what I'm doing and very humbled to be on the show.
Cool. So you've sold jewelry, services?
Yes.
Well, Monster was kind of like SaaS. Well, it's
SaaS. Monster, yeah. Monster was a combination of SaaS and almost advertising to a certain extent online. So yeah. So, and then in between there in college, I did a little bit of B2B in the telecom industry. I sold for Verizon Wireless. So yeah, I've touched a few different industries.
Yeah, cool. Was any one of them a better match than others for you and your personality?
Great question. So I think it was more, I don't know if one was a better match for me. I think my approach has kind of always tried to been centered around solving a problem. Yeah. So I think what I would say is the ones that probably were the most fun were the ones where I really felt like I could get in line with a customer and really solve an outcome, like solve a problem, provide an outcome. The jewelry, while that was neat, is more of a transactional, so to speak. And I certainly am not a subject matter expert in jewelry. I learned to kind of be, but I think the services space I really like a lot because it's complex. You're at the table, sort of at the beginning of the whole cycle. So you're coming up with the ideation of what success can look like. So I would say all of them have certain things that you enjoy, but really the services space is where I've enjoyed the most.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly a hard sell because you always have to differentiate. They could do it in-house. They could, call up the 15 people they get spammed from offshore. There's always somebody else calling. Somebody knows a cousin of somebody who's really smart.
It's a great point. I used to tell everyone, it's a very, especially in the space I came in for 13 years, it's an incredibly, for lack of a better term, commoditized industry in the sense that everywhere you look, there is a firm doing it because there is such a need and demand, especially in information technology. So it was extremely important that you understood the landscape of what you were up against in terms of your clients and their buying personas and what their frustrations were, quite frankly, in being inundated so much by those types of situations that you really had to have a good, not just a value proposition, but the approach to the customer as well.
And what was the motive to get into leadership versus staying a individual contributor?
Yeah, great question. For me, at least, Brian, I didn't plan on it. It kind of happened organically. And I have a very dear mentor of mine who's still a good friend. In fact, I was just talking to him. His name's Chris Decker. And he was actually the individual who saw something in me at a very young age that in his mind portrayed the leadership qualities. And what he did, which was very smart, was in my brain, I was always going to be the top sales guy, right? I wanted to be the top sales guy, be number one, et cetera, right? That's all I wanted to do, right? That seemed great and perfect. He, which I wasn't aware of at the time, put me on assignments to help scale the business of teaching and mentoring other reps. Now, for me, my personality has always been one of I love to help. I love helping people. So sure, I'll take that on and I'd love to do that. What he was doing was he was giving me exposure into leadership, right? Yeah. He was exposing me to the personas of different people, how they think. And really before I knew it, unintentionally, he kind of had me running the office. So he had me doing the position. And I had this crossroad where I could say, all right, you can either continue to be an individual contributor and do well, and that's great, or are you being fulfilled in what I have you doing right now? Because I believe, Scott, you have the ability to impact a master audience, right? A bigger audience, and really drive outcomes, not just through you, but through other people. And that's, Brian, for me, where when I sat down and reflected, I said, I love being in front of the customer, and I'll always do that. But if I can teach and show and get people successful into what they want long-term, that to me felt like the most important thing I wanted to do. And so he knew what he was doing, obviously. And before I knew it, I was fortunate enough to get into a leadership role. And from there, it's just been something I've always been passionate about.
And how about the other side of leadership, kind of the administration, operations, having hard conversations internally and externally?
Yeah. So I make the joke sometimes. I used to joke in the services world. People are like, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm a guidance counselor. Some days I'm a high school principal. Other days, sometimes I'm an admin." And you know, as well as anyone knows, it isn't. You have to be prepared and understand that part of leadership is doing the parts that aren't as sexy as we all want to be in front of the customer, or just teaching and coaching how to, sell and build value. But what I learned, and through a lot of failure as well, right? Trust me, there was a lot of failure along the way. I learned that some of those areas that you're referring to, especially the EQ side of it, of really knowing your people and what makes them who they are and what makes them tick. Some of those conversations I had to learn about just one-on-one time with them were far more important at times than putting a sales strategy together, right? Those conversations arguably are more important. I also learned that knowing how to build an operating rhythm and a cadence of how you run your day, I was terrible at that at first, Brian. Terrible, because you don't run your own business the way you run a larger scale. So I had a lot of mentors that I leaned on, that I had to lean on, that I said, "Hey, you have this figured out, and how you run your day, how you develop a cadence. My organization skills are not the most phenomenal. How have you figured out how to organize and kind of have your system in place?" And so I was very lucky that I had people surrounded around me that showed me how to do that. But to your point, you have to do all those different things to be successful.
And that's a good point, because as a rep, it's much more like a firefighter. That
Yes.
when the bell rings, everything else gets put aside, and you go and you fight that fire. Then you kind of clean up, you eat, you take a rest. Where a leader, it's much more of a cadence. You're building something. Mondays look a lot the same. Fridays look a lot the same. And if you don't keep everything in order, then it turns into a fire.
You hit the nail on the head. It's funny, because what you just said, I was just talking to someone about this recently, and the question of, hey, what are the best qualities in sales leadership or in leadership? And what you just said is one of them is discipline. You have to be very, very disciplined as well, to knowing how your day works and not letting your day run you. And that is not something easy. If you've never done it before, you've got to learn how to do that. So I think you're absolutely right in that statement.
And I like the other point about having those conversations with the reps before you need to have them, because that's what builds that, the trust. And the trust is the bandwidth of communications.
You know what? It's something I was taught, again, by a mentor, that served me really well, is when you work sometimes with sales leaders, and to your point, you're almost in the reactive state where there's already a problem. The sales rep isn't happy. They're maybe on the right. They're on the edge, so to speak, right? They're not hitting their numbers. Sometimes I just ask, Brian, I go, "Hey," when I'm mentoring, I said, do you know why they show up to work every day? Like, why do they come here?
Right.
What are they trying to do? Right? Like, what is their purpose in life? What are they trying to do personally and professionally? Sometimes I'll get a sideways look of, I think it's this. Why does that matter, Scott? Right? Well, you can't really help influence and inspire if you don't know the person and what they're here to do. So part of at least what I did, Brian, from a leadership perspective, is Before I even started getting into tactical or strategic conversations, I tried my best to learn about each person and who they are and what matters to them, so that when those conversations need to happen, right, there's a lot more of that trust that's already been engendered, because you take the time, and people want that. I know I wanted that when I was selling. I wanted a leader that I could trust, that I felt had a vested interest in my success.
And if you don't have that, both people are kind of playing a role. And what's being said has no meaning. It's just you're playing business instead of doing business.
It's exactly right. It's not, it loses authenticity. It's not real. It's exactly what you just said. It's a role and it's a checklist, and you leave the conversation and that's all it is.
Right. And then both people turn around, roll their eyes, and go back to their job.
Exactly. It's exactly right. And it's tough, to your point, because sometimes, when you're span of control, right, where you are a leader and you're running an office of hundreds of reps, sometimes I'll get, well, Scott, when I'm running hundreds of sales reps throughout the Southeast or the country, how can I get that time, with each one of them, right? And my response to that has always been, you're not going to always be able to get that time with each one of them. There will be moments that when you're in the moment, you have to embrace and take advantage of those. But if you are developing a culture where you have men and women that you trust implicitly, that are carrying the same message that you are and influence, your job is to create those people into leaders to help impact those other individuals as well.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to, if you have 100 people, hopefully there's a little bit of layers in between.
Sure. Right.
And
exactly.
And I also like the word inspire, because I did a video. It's like, you're not there to spy on them. You're there to inspire them. If you have to spy on them, there's something wrong.
There is, which goes into, it's another topic too that comes to mind that I was talking about. There's this term out there of micromanagement, right? Micromanagement, to me, in my brain, is a lot of spying in some ways, right?
It's exactly what it is.
It's exactly what it is. And some leaders feel that that's the way to do it, right? You should be spying every day. And it just boggles my mind, because I'm saying you're so missing out on so much opportunity to inspire, coach, and develop, right? And then what it becomes is, to the salesperson, all you are to them is the cop coming in to spy on them, not to help them. And you wonder why their productivity isn't good. You wonder why the quality of what they do isn't good. You're not inspiring and teaching. You're managing a metric as a spy. And so it's just you hit a nerve with me when you said that, because it's a problem.
Well, I think it comes from, they don't know what to do, so they do what they know. And what they know is to count things, check the CRM. But that I'm sure you've been spied on before. If you're in the airport and you see the camera up there, you act a little bit different.
Of course.
And you feel creeped out, and you're like, I'm going to go sit somewhere else.
Right, exactly. It's such a great point. Most people don't want to be spied on, right?
No.
You want to feel a level of trust and empowerment, but you're absolutely right. And I think you bring up a great point, that is an evolution of leadership too, where, there's a whole old school of, hey, you manage a spreadsheet, numbers, KPIs, and that's how you lead. And it's like, that is the old maybe way of doing things at one point in time. And there still are people doing it. So what it tells me, to your point, is, and I talk about this, is how are you evolving as a sales leader, right? How are you learning what's modernized today? How are you learning how to do different things? And the minute, Brian, that I get scared, right, is the minute that I tell myself, I've got it all figured out. What I do right now is the way to do it. That's the moment, if I tell myself that I know that I'm not doing what I need to be doing.
Especially because you've sold some pretty complex things. Certainly the services stuff is really complex. And if you just focus on activities, it's not going to work, because your customers are buying a solution. and they're buying that trust that your company can provide that solution. Anyone can say they can do it, but the person buying it needs to know you can do it.
That's exactly right. And to the activity point that you bring up, it's another great point. Is then you'll have sales leaders say, "Well, the rep's hitting all the activity, and they're not being successful. I thought the activity worked." And you go, "Wow. Well, let me ask you: have you looked at what is it meaningful activity? Is it proper? Is it value-based activity? Oh." So they're meeting the same stakeholders 7 times in a row because they're scared that if they don't hit their numbers,
Yes,
they're going to get in trouble. And that's a whole paradigm shift of what you're referring to of value-based activity and how you approach your customer. Let it be less about your internal metrics and let it be more about what is going to serve and provide the customer the best experience. That's my philosophy, at least.
right. Because your experience as a leader should help the people with what are they working on and what priority and in what way and why. Let's talk through that.
That's exactly right. Right. What industry are we in? What's the landscape of that industry? Right. What do we know are the common challenges they face? How are we now empathizing with our buyer to understand what challenges they may face? And then let's really focus on what problem can we solve? How can we help them solve a problem or mitigate a problem that may affect them? And if you put the empathy hat on in that regard, I think, in my opinion, sales starts to be done the correct way where you're focusing on value and solving problems. And I think we tend to get a little bit too caught up in, at least my opinion, of we sometimes are pitching or telling a company how good we are, but you can't even answer the problem that you're solving. It's terrible, Brian.
Right.
I'll ask that question and they'll say, "I don't know. I just know that they're looking for a vendor that can do X, Y, Z." Well, good luck, because you're never going to get up the value food chain that way.
Exactly. And most complex sales are conversations. In
That's exactly right.
conversation, it's creativity, it's empathy, it's curiosity, it's interest in the other person. And that takes, you getting into a flow state, you being relaxed, them being relaxed, and not worrying about, did I get to slide 15 yet?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And those are leadership things. Anyone can be that admin. When I coach leaders, I kind of say, get a sales admin and get that person to have everything look the way you want.
Right. Right.
Take it off of your shoulders and the rep shoulders.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I love what you're saying about a conversation. I think if we talk about that topic, the first conversation and every conversation at the level of complexity, and at least in services, and for that matter with anyone, in my opinion, um, the person wants to feel as though there's a genuine curiosity and interest level. And I always tell people, are you listening to listen or listening to understand?
Yeah.
There are fundamental differences. If you are listening to understand what the person is saying, people by nature want to feel and know that this person is genuinely interested in understanding what we're trying to do. Less of, as you said, the checkbook marks of, okay, I asked the questions, now let me transition into pitch mode right now.
Right.
And it's some of the best executive meetings I've ever had are nothing more than strategic business conversations of the art of the possible that then subsequently lead into continuation of discussions of, let's take this. We've started to come up with ideas and percolate some things here. Let's bring in some other people and continue that. It's nothing about closing the sale, or it's nothing about any of that. It is true thought leadership conversations.
Right. Because once you get above a commodity transaction, they don't really know what they want. They want to solve something. They want to capture something. They want to explore something. And that's a journey.
Absolutely.
if you want
Absolutely.
your kitchen redone or your backyard decorated or landscaped, you have this idea. I want it to look nice, but beyond that, you don't know what it is. You got appliances, you got flooring, you got countertops, you got ventilation, and if you're the contractor, you go, let's talk through these. Let me show you something. You like this? You like this?
It's and think that yeah, right. It's and if you think about what you enjoy as the buyer, we gravitate to those people that we say, look, here, I know I need a great backyard, and I know my wife wants it to look this way, and I know I have this vision of like hundreds of people out there, and we're going to be the house, right, that everyone goes to and says, Scott Farber's house is where we hang out. I have no idea how I want that to look, except that's kind of my vision of the end result. I am going to somebody that shows an interest in me and saying, let's walk through all the different ways that can happen. Yeah. And let's let you decide which one is best for you. And I'm going to give you some options. I'm going to tell you the risk of doing it this way, right, the risk of doing it that, right. And suddenly your trust versus the guy that says, it's going to be $60,000. We're going to build this gazebo here, boom, boom, boom. And you're going to love it. Right. You're just kind of like, you weren't involved in the journey.
No journey, and they give you a quote and you're like, that's a lot, and you go, I'll do it next year.
Exactly. I didn't think it was going to be that much. In fact, yeah, I'm not good. Versus you do the journey that you're talking about, it's consultative, we're in this together. It suddenly becomes less about the price versus more about the entire experience and what you're getting as an end result. So I think it's a great point you bring up. It can be in every walk of life, quite frankly.
And what epiphanies have you had either as a rep or as a leader where all of a sudden where it didn't work and now it does, where you're just like, I wish I learned that earlier?
Yeah. I'll tell you first as a leader, and this is a big epiphany for me. I remember my first leadership position was running a market that was a small enough market, Brian, where I could almost, to a certain extent, while I was leading people, I could almost, to a certain extent, also sell the market as well, meaning that a lot of what was coming in from a customer acquisition, et cetera, was some heavy lifting done by me with my reps alongside, which was a great model for the size of that market. Where I had a major epiphany is that I moved into a big boy market, which was a market that was triple the size of what I was selling, right? Triple the amount of sales reps. Well, in my opinion, or in my mindset, I should say at the time, Brian, it was, I'm going to use those same fundamentals that I did in a small market of, I'm just going to go sell this market and have some reps go alongside. You can imagine how well that worked out for me. That was a very, very, very poor approach because of a lot of things: span of control, delegation, empowerment, et cetera. So the epiphany that I had at that moment was the only way that you're going to be able to grow this market and serve your customers is less of you trying to do all the heavy lifting yourself and having people join you, but you making that fundamental shift of empowerment and delegation through the people, less about you. So while I still stayed with the executive relationships, all of my energy shifted into more of the teaching, the coaching, and the development of the people, and how to then take those people and expand that. So that was a huge epiphany for me from a leadership perspective. And I guess in a long-winded way, it was the power of delegation and the power of empowerment in others, which I think when you're at least for me, when you were a successful sales rep, right? And then you did a model that kind of worked, you just automatically assume that way is going to work. And it just doesn't when you try to, it just doesn't work. Yeah.
And how did you deal with the feeling or the lack of control? Because one of the great things about being a rep is, you're the point of contact. You're making everything happen. You have a lot more control. When you work through people, it's a little scary at first, isn't it?
It is, especially, we in our own brains, right? Especially if we've performed, is, we always sometimes like to think, well, God, if I'm the one doing it, I know it's going to work out, right?
It'll be done right.
Right. Or you just, to your point, you feel like all the onus can then fall on me, right? I'm not relying on someone else. For me, what I recognized is I knew that would be a challenge, Brian, in the sense that not being that close to the customer and in control was something that I knew was going to probably eat at me a little bit. But when I took a step back, I said to myself, okay, but you're responsible, right, for the development of people and the development of a market, the growth of an entire massive market, right? So you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
To allow that to happen. And so that epiphany to me was, Scott, you're going to be uncomfortable every day, and that means you're growing. That means if you're uncomfortable every day, you're growing. And if you want, what you can do is when you're doing your pipeline meetings with your reps, when you're teaching and developing and you're going through strategy, what an incredible opportunity for you where you see opportunities where they could have done things differently to allow them to flourish. And so one of the things, Brian, I started to do is I had the tendency as an earlier leader to come right in and fix the problem, right?
Really? I think you're the only one.
So parachute in. Yeah, let me go take
Get out of my way.
Get out of my way. I'm going to deal with it, guys. Don't worry. And then part of it's you feel good because you're like, look, guys, I solved the problem, right? See how that works? Again, I quickly realized you missed a huge opportunity for growth in your rep there. So what I learned is I always used to use this analogy. I'm going to let you skid your knees a lot. I'm not going to let you fall down and break your face, but I'm going to let you skid your knees a lot on purpose. So there would be times where I knew what the rep was doing at that time probably might not have been the best behavior, but if I allowed them to make mistakes and skid their knees, it would be a phenomenal coaching opportunity for us to discuss. Here's what you learned from that. Here's what you took away. Now let's apply that moving forward. So long as it was never detrimental to something massive across the board, that was a very, very big change for Scott Farber. But it served me very, very well because those reps remember those. If we think about the times that we grow the most, right? It's the times where we face adverse situations, we make a mistake, we're uncomfortable, et cetera. And so to me, I kind of went with the mentality of you're doing your team a disservice by trying to take in so much control.
You are, because if it works, they don't really feel the ownership. And if it fails, they're going to blame you.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
But then you're going to blame them and it becomes this stalemate of blame.
That's exactly right. But yeah, it's, I think, Brian, people ask me that question sometimes of, and I don't know if you've been asked this, but people will say, can leadership be taught, or is it just an innate gift that you have? My response to it has always been, right, there are elements of being a natural leader that people have, right? Gregarious qualities, et cetera. But I do believe, right, that there are absolutely leadership traits and characteristics that can be taught as well, 100%, if that's the path that the individual gets the most fulfillment out of what wants, right? Because you know as well as I do, as what you've done in your entire career is you genuinely, I think a great sales leader genuinely enjoys serving the people and seeing them be, you have to have that mentality. And if that's not you and you're a lone wolf and you don't really enjoy that, you can go be an individual contributor then.
Well, that's it. Probably for the last 10 months, I've been interviewing, where reps recommended a leader. And the one number constant pattern has been they got into leadership because they wanted to help other people versus wanted to just move up the org chart.
That's right.
Because I've seen the ones that move up the org chart and they're still the lone wolf trying to work through people. And it just doesn't work. They're not happy. The reps aren't happy. The sales aren't happening.
I've seen it as well, as I'm sure you have, and you couldn't be more accurate. And there is a piece of it that I'm going to say is, most sales executives, we are all driven by the financial component of what we can do. And you have to also know that, at least in my experience, right? If the only thing you care about is compensation, then you probably won't do well in leadership at all, right? No. You just won't. It's impossible. You have to have that innate desire that your fulfillment is made through what you said of helping others. And then what ends up happening is leadership is very, 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 very hard, and there's a lot of responsibility, but you have so much enjoyment in doing it that you wake up every day enjoying what you're doing.
Cool. Hey, Scott, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, no problem at all. So integrisgroup.com is our website. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Scott Farber, Orlando, Florida as well. And I welcome any connections or discussions around these topics, Brian. And please keep doing what you're doing, because I am a massive fan, and just being on the show, I'm very thankful for you having me today.
Well, when you look at micromanagement, it really comes down to what I call, if you don't know what to do, you do what you know. And what do you know? Being busy should produce results. And it's true. Activity is a critical element. We have to get up in the morning. We have to put our time in. We have to take action. That's good. Then what happens is we have to turn our brain on. We have to turn on that prefrontal cortex and decide, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And in what order are we going to do it? They're not all equal. This is the difference between sales and marketing. Now, marketing focuses on the masses. They come up with a persona or a list of accounts and personas. They come up with what that person will most likely be interested in. They market either the problem or the product. It's on the masses, and they put an ad or they put a piece of content out and they promote it. That's marketing. And sales, we can't do that. Everyone's trying to do that today. Let me send out proactively unsolicited emails, phone calls to this person with a commercial, an ad. And it does work 1% of the time, not 100. If you're great at it, it might work 2% of the time. And some people are happy with that. But, if it takes you 2 or 3 days to start a conversation, that's a lot of pain to get to the pleasure. That's the wrong way to do it. Or certainly not the smart way to do it. And people try and scale it with both, people with no experience who are cheap. That's why they hire them, or because they're obedient. But what ends up happening is when you micromanage people, the brain turns off because they're doing what they're told, not what they think is right. What you want to do as a leader is develop that judgment of what to work on, in what order, and in what way. And to do that, you have to communicate with people. Not mandate, communicate. There's a difference. And when you mandate somebody, guess how they feel? Okay. They'll do as little as possible to not just survive. They will not become creative. And sales is a creative process. If we're doing what we're told or what every idiot says on the internet, they all say the same thing, right? All the blogs, they just copy each other. And, it hasn't really changed much in a long time. And it's all outside looking in, meaning that I'm the rep, they're the prospect. I say this, they object, I handle objection. But that's not selling. That's peddling. That's marketing. That is not a conversation with another human being. And a lot of managers get into management because they did the grind, and maybe they had some talent. Or maybe they were a natural. And as you heard in this interview, giving up that control to another person is really hard. If you're a parent, you know what this is like. The first time your kid rides a bicycle. At the beginning you hold the seat and you run alongside them. But when they get that inertia, that momentum, and they get on their own, there's a scary moment for both you and the kid. But once that momentum is there and they now have gone from not successfully riding a bike to successfully riding a bike, both people feel great about it. And sales, a lot of managers never let that go. They're very controlling because it's just natural that when you're in control, you feel better. And when you're out of control, you're uncomfortable. And that uncomfortableness turns into paranoia, where what I hear all the time from managers is like, I'm going to get fired if I don't get the result, so I have to get the result. True, that is true. But you can't scale if you're doing 5 to 10 people's jobs. And sales is not an administrative job. There's an element of administration to it. But when that goes beyond 10%, it turns into an administrative job. And managers always kind of think that, it doesn't take up much time. Maybe, but a lot of things don't take a lot of time. But they do take away from that intellectual energy and the drag. And the number one thing I tell all managers is like, once you get to 5 reps, hire a sales admin that administrates all the things that you want and need done as far as the reporting for both you and your reps. Not every data entry, but making sure it's clean and what they call hygiene. Get it the way you like it. Through interviewing the reps, through sitting through the one-on-ones, through the forecast reviews. And they say, well, I can't afford that. Well, it's a whole lot cheaper than having your reps do it. And this micromanagement is killing sales. It's not increasing revenue. It's decreasing it. But no one can see that because they're in control. Some people would rather be in control of a train wreck than let it go and have a chance of a train wreck. The thing is, it's going to be a train wreck either way. But which one's going to build? You just can't build and grow as a micromanager. The best people leave, the worst people stay and smile and nod, and it turns into what I call mandated mediocrity. And it was kind of like the key motive for me to go out on my own. It was right at the, where Salesforce and the CRM became the focus. And, the CEO had hired me as a rep, but then he hired this VP who was just an idiot. But he was a great admin. He was a sales admin with a VP of sales title. Terrible in front of customers, had no idea how a complex sale works. Yes, everyone can take an order. Everyone can pressure at the end of the quarter, can hound, can expedite. But that is not selling. It can get an order that's going to happen done, but it can't create an order or make an order bigger. And this is what people don't understand. People are getting the simple deals, not the marginal deals. Your compensation at the high end is 100% based off of those marginal deals, the deals that wouldn't have happened without you. Too many reps think it's up to luck, and luck can happen. In sales, somebody can get a lucky territory, a bluebird is what they call it, where a deal that you didn't really work on, it just happened. It flew in the window. But that is not a strategy. Bluebirds are not a strategy. To build a career in sales, you have to be able to create those marginal deals. Make them bigger, make them faster, make more of them. And to do that, you have to understand the whole game of sales. And sales very quickly becomes like one of those topics that people have hard core beliefs, much like politics, religion. And you can't, once people have them cemented in, it's really hard to change them because they're part of their identity. What we have to do is break that, because if you don't play the whole game, the game plays you. But you will not accept that. You will blame it on everything but you. But the paycheck tells you, the market tells you. It's a reflection of how well you play that game. And once you open up to that, once you take that red pill and you now see how the game is really played, the whole game of sales, then you can start to influence it. Up until then, you're just an order taker expediting orders. And that's like 95% of the sales reps out there. And that's not to be mean. It's just accuracy. I did a bunch of videos this week on LinkedIn about the complex, about being single-threaded, about decision. And this is the feedback I got from very senior CROs. And they would list, this methodology or that method. I go, or they say, like, go to talk to the decision maker. What decision? Oh, who signs this? Procurement signs it. Well, they have no authority, though. They don't make the decision of what product to buy or how much of it to buy or even how much to spend on it. They act like they do, but they do not. I was in procurement when I was in college. It was my job. I went to school at night. I did computer programming. I was a parts guy, and I was in procurement at this small manufacturing company. So I never bought anything that I wasn't told to buy. I could pick the vendor sometimes if it was the same exact product from the same exact manufacturer brand, and it happened to be cheaper or I liked the person better. And, I had some flexibility on that. But if an engineer said, Brian, buy this from this person, I bought this from that person. That was my job to do. I didn't get in trouble if I didn't do that. I guess I would get in trouble if I didn't do that. The point here is we think that the person signing it. Now, did I sign the order? My manager did, and he was in procurement. But, the budgetary approval was it went to engineering, up to the CEO, over to finance, then to procurement. Now, a lot of people don't even understand that administrative path. Almost nobody understands the political path, and that's where it dies. So much more on that political side or the administrative side where somebody is a naysayer. Now, a lot of people think that it's just knowing these things. It's preventing these things and guiding these things and giving the artifacts that each of these individuals need. This is how you create and win the game. Now, are you going to win every game? No. But what you also need to do is have the judgment of identifying the games that you can and will win. And that's winning the complex sale. Now, to answer your questions about the course, is it right for me? Does it match me? Well, are you in the complex sale? Do you want to close more of them? What's a complex sale, Brian? Many decision makers, many different sales calls. It's not just the simple sale. You go to buy a car, you either buy the car or you don't. Typically, you might go to a bunch of dealers, but you're either buying a car or you're not. A company looks at stuff, and it could make perfectly good sense. If they have the money before you even call on them. Just throw that word budget out of the... No, but there's no budget. Budget's an excuse. Yes, a division may have a budget, but nobody outlines in that level of detail. They put something in at the beginning of the year as kind of a range of what these things are cost, about hiring plans and stuff. But, as far as a fixed hard cost, no, it's kind of loose. And what we end up doing is kind of working around these little limiting beliefs within the deal. So if you're in that complex sale and you want to win more, you want to make more money, how are you going to do it? Are you going to rely on luck? Good luck with that. Inbound, that's really drying up. And you got to also understand where we are in history. We're at the crux of what will turn out to be a boom segment. Nobody really sees it yet, but it's going to happen. And are you going to take the most of it? Or are you going to ride that wave, or are you going to let the wave crash you? Winning the complex sale, first understanding it, being able to play the whole game, and people, well, what will I get out of it? You'll win more deals. You will know which deals to work on. You will be able to get those deals to move, and you will guide them. Instead of being on the outside of the deal looking in, you're on the inside of the deal moving it through. Some of the other things I heard in those comments is, okay, one's the decision maker. Who's signing it? Signing what? The purchase order gets signed by procurement. You've got to get economic approval internally. But what you end up happening today is people are buying a lot of little things and they are uncomfortable. Buying something requires change. Anytime you buy something that comes into your house, you're going to make room for it. Your life might change a little. You get a new TV, get a new dining room set, redo the kitchen. You don't know really what it's going to look like. You want the outcome. You want to watch the sports program. You want to cook. You want to do whatever. You have to guide people through that change, because the default is to do nothing. The default is not to buy something. We keep trying to compete against our competitors. Our number one competitor is doing nothing. And how we keep them moving into take action is a skill. So check it out at b2brevenue.com. Those 15-minute intro calls are booking up. I think they're almost all booked right now. I get a little frustrated with them because the FAQ answers every question. I really don't get a unique question. If you have an excuse for not taking it, then fine, don't take it. But please don't waste my time. Everybody has their own excuse. Oh, mine's different. Does it work in this location, in this industry? People in my country don't talk to each other. I know, whatever. You live with that excuse. Do you want to be comfortable like your manager micromanaging and having an excuse for being a jerk, or do you really want to become better at sales? Yes, people talk to each other in every country. Otherwise, there wouldn't be people in that country. Do large companies all make decisions the same way? There's a pattern. Is it identical? No. Much like the weather, there is a pattern. Yes, there are storms and there are anomalies, but there is a seasonal pattern. You got to learn it, got to roll with it. You got to become better. Go to B2B to Revenue, check it out, sign up for the courses. There's 2 payment options, and please read this carefully. I put it up there in all caps and bold, is that you can pay all at once and you get a year-long access. That includes all the content day one. Nothing's gated. It's on demand. You can watch it and consume it at your pace, on your schedule. It has 2 other components: office hours, an hour meetup every other Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live. But if you miss it or you can't make it, you can submit your questions. They're all recorded and put in the course. So we got almost 3 years of them in there. Great resource to hear people. And on the office hours this week, I basically told people, the fastest way to get the results is skip the doubt stage. The doubt stage is, does this work? If you don't believe it works, go down through the one-on-ones and follow the must-watch ones. The must-watch ones are where people have the epiphany, where they quit doubting it and try it, and they see it work, and then they're happy. Because the doubt stage can take a month. Don't waste a month of your life doubting it. Yes, it does work. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works. Find the people who are selling something closest to you under the situations that are closest to yours. And watch the path that they take, because you can see the same people going through the one-on-ones, which is a 30-minute Zoom call with me, where we work and apply the course to your particular situation. They're recorded and put in the course for the benefit of everybody else in the course. They're all anonymous. No one needs to know your name, your product, or your customer, because they don't matter. It might matter of like what industry you're in and what issues you face, but no one cares about what product it is. So you have no worries about competition or anything. And all of this is at your disposal. It is not just this canned approach by a bunch of fired sales leaders or fired SDRs that you see on YouTube. I did it for close to 30 years. And I hope you can sense the passion that I have for sales in these podcasts. I hate to lose and I love to win. And I hate to waste my time. So I really dissected this down to the gory detail. So check it out at b2brevenue.com. Also, tell a friend about the show. We'll see you next time.